Them dogs is hell. Whew. What an ass whooping. Georgia dominates the lousy, stinking Gators for another year. 43-20 ass whooping yesterday in the cocktail party. I had to hear for 2 weeks straight, all over social media, YouTube videos, these sports broadcasters. Oh, what is Georgia going to do without Brock Bowers? Brock Bowers is injured. Can they even win another single game? All these Florida fans all week long, you better watch out. Not a complete team without Brock Bowers. Georgia can't win a game without Brock Bowers. They won, and they won big. And they did not miss a single step. Now, I cannot wait to get Brock Bowers back. He is probably the best player in the country in college football right now. So, obviously, we want him back. But, whew, Georgia put a thumping on the Florida Gators, and it wasn't even close. But like I said, final score was 43-20. Final score should have been 43-7. Florida came out on their first drive and scored a touchdown, but after that, it was all Georgia. I think it was like 36 unanswered points after that first touchdown for the Florida Gators. It was a complete game from Georgia, from start to finish, an utter dismantling of the Florida offense, defense. I mean, it wasn't close. There was never... After that first drive for Florida, game was never in doubt. We had playmakers step up. Carson Beck looked phenomenal. Run game was better. Ladd McConkey, we saw a hell of a lot more from Ladd McConkey, and he looks dynamite as ever. I'm glad that he's working back into the fold. Dominic Lovett, good game for Dominic Lovett. I mean, it was great. I could not have asked for a better game. The only thing I could have asked for was to shut Florida out. That would have been absolutely hilarious. Oof. And that hit in the third quarter that Javon Bullard laid on number 3 of the Gators offense on a third down. I don't know who the gentleman was, number 3, but that hit that Bullard laid, holy cow. Textbook, brutal hit. Love to see it. But I mean, let's just jump into some of these numbers. I mean, the game, like, just the eye test alone, there's no reason why someone should not have Georgia at number 1. And I get that this game isn't like, I understand that the Gators aren't a great team. They're a garbage pile team. They are. They just are. They're probably going to go 6-6. They still got to play LSU. That's a loss. They still got to play Missouri. That's a loss. They still got to play FSU. That's a loss. The only other game that's kind of winnable on their schedule for the rest of the season is in Arkansas. And they do get that game at home, and Arkansas hasn't looked great this year. But it would have surprised me if Florida finds a way to lose. But they probably get that win, and they probably end up going 6-6. Like I said, it's just a lousy team. But, I mean, total yards, Georgia put up 486 total yards to Florida's 339. Georgia had 315 passing yards. Florida had 230. And Georgia rushed for 171 yards. And here's the thing. Florida only rushed for 109. They couldn't get anything going. They couldn't. Graham Mertz was sacked 4 times. 4 times he was sacked. Georgia defense also had 8 tackles for loss, resulting in 32 yards lost for that Florida offense. That offensive line for Florida is probably the worst offensive line in the country. It has got to be one of the top 3 worst offensive lines in the country. That is a joke of an offensive line. And if you're Florida fans, that's where you got to start to build your team. I mean, you're not going to win anything with that kind of offensive play. Couldn't get anything going. Carson Beck was 19 for 28 with a 67 completion percent for, like I said, 315 yards. He was averaging 11.3 yards per throw. He had 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. This is Georgia's first game of the season where they had no turnovers. And the thing that I like is they didn't even have a fumble. Like, sometimes you can fumble the ball and recover it, so it still counts as a fumble, just not a lost fumble. Georgia didn't even have that. great ball security in this game. That's what you want to see. And that was my keys to the game for Georgia. Protect the ball. Ball security. Don't turn the ball over. Don't give this Florida team an unnecessary drive. Don't give them extra drives. And they did just that. They did exactly that. They protected the ball. No turnovers, no interceptions, no fumbles. Beautiful to see. That's what I was waiting. This was the kind of game I was waiting to see from Georgia. And yes, like I said, Florida isn't the greatest team, but still, to be able to put this kind of game together with Brock Bowers out against your rival is fantastic, and it's good to see. Them dogs is hell, I'm telling you. Ladd McConkey, he had 6 receptions for 135 yards, 22.5 yards at average, 1 touchdown. His longest one, I think it was a touchdown he had, was 54 yards. Dominic Lovett didn't get a touchdown, but he did get on the stat sheet. He had 4 receptions for 83 yards, 20.8 yards in average. And Dylan Bell also out there, 2 for 21 yards, and he had a touchdown. Rushing, Dajon Edwards was dynamite, 15 carries for 98 yards, averaging 6.4 yards a run. He had 2 touchdowns. Kendall Milton, I still don't know. Kendall Milton is hit or miss sometimes, but he had a good game. He was okay. 13 rushes for 55, 13 carries for 55 yards, averaging 4.2 a rush, and he had a touchdown. Georgia team averaging about 4.5 yards per attempt on the ground. And like I said, I mean, Florida could not get anything going on. Besides that first drive, they could not get anything going on offense. Now, I know they put up 20 points, and we'll get to that, but they only had 3 plays in the entire game. Florida did. They only had 3 plays in the entire game that were over more than 20 yards. One of them was a 48-yarder, a 22-yarder, and a 27-yarder. That's not going to get it done playing this Georgia team, because I said the keys for success for Florida is to be explosive. You've got to swing. You have to take shots, and you got to connect on those shots. And they couldn't. They had they had 1 explosive play. 3 if you want to count. If you count any play over 20 yards, which I would consider an explosive play, they have 3. That's not going to get it done against Georgia. Now, they played a relatively clean game. I think both teams only had 2 penalties in this game. But so that also, that's kind of what you needed to see. But I mean, just with the complete lack of offensive line for Florida and just not being able to get anything going on offense was obviously lethal for Florida. I mean, they had 109, like I said. UF went for 109 rushing, and like I said, 48 of those rushing yards come off 1 explosive play from Montrell Johnson Jr. That was their longest play of the game. So when almost 50% of your rushing yards come off 1 play, and you barely just crack 100 yards rushing, that's not good. How do UGA, like I said, had 4 sacks and 8 tackles for loss, resulting in 32 lost yards for Florida. You know how many Florida had? How many times Florida got in the backfield? Almost none. They had 0 sacks, and they had 4 tackles for loss, resulting in a grand total of 3 lost yards. 3. That offensive line was horrible for Florida and dynamic for Georgia. I mean, Carson Beck was clean I don't know if he had a scratch mark on him. He had phenomenal protection, plenty of time in the pocket, was able to do read after read after read, check down after check down. I mean, the guy was not touched. Not touched. And when you come, and then that dumbass 4th down play call that they called, it was still, this was at this point, Florida's down 10-7. So they're still very much in this game. They put a good drive going. They get to, I believe, Georgia's 30-ish yard line, around there. They're getting ready to go into the red zone. They might not have even been in the red zone. But anyway, I don't think they're outside the red zone because they didn't go for the field goal. So they were down 10-7 at this point, still very much in the game, and it was like 4th and inches. And so they go for it, which is what Billy Napier should do in that situation. You want to knock off the number 1 team in the country, you got to be aggressive. And that is a perfect time to be aggressive. But the play call on that 4th down was the stupidest decision I've ever seen. Just run the ball up the middle, a quarterback sneak, or just hand it off in the backfield and run it up the middle. It's 4th and inches. They line Graham Mertz up under the center. They hike the ball between Graham Mertz's legs to the running back, who then runs out acting like he's going to throw it. We blow it up on defense. He gets sacked for like a loss of 6 yards, or I guess not sacked, tackled in the backfield because he's not the quarterback. I guess he was acting as the quarterback. I don't remember the guy's name. Maybe it was Montrell Johnson. I don't know but it was just a stupid, like, dumb trick play. Just line up the ball and run it. I mean, Georgia sniffed it out, and they got their ass. Ended up being like a loss of 5-6 yards on the play. They don't convert the down. Georgia picks it back up. They go down, score a touchdown, making it 17-7 at that point. And at that point, the game's over. At that point, I get Florida ended up scoring 20. But at that point, it's going to be very hard for the Gators to come back against this Georgia defense. I mean, just the drive chart alone. You start out, this is Georgia's drive chart. Field goal, touchdown, 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 punt, then the halftime. And then on their first drive out, they punted, and they went field goal, touchdown, touchdown. This was Florida's. They scored that first touchdown on their first drive. Then they went punt, turnover on downs, which we just talked about. They fumbled the ball. Then they went punt, turnover on downs again, and then they scored 2 touchdowns late in the 4th quarter, garbage time touchdowns. I think their last touchdown they scored was like a minute left, just out of some self-preservation not to lose a game 43 to well, at that point was it 13. Just a joke. Those 2 late-ass touchdowns don't mean a goddamn thing. That this game should have been 43-7. Those last 2 touchdowns or whatever. But, I mean, just overall complete domination. There's no part in this game that Florida looked better, even on special teams. Muff punt down there in their own end of the field. We muff the punt. It goes into goes out of bounds behind the end zone, so it becomes a safety. We were very close to getting it a touchdown, but it does become a safety. And I think at that point we were up, 25-7 or 24-7, and with the safety it made it 26-7. Now Florida did come out and get a stop. Florida's defense came out and got a stop, so they kind of prevented it a little bit, but still, I mean, at that point Georgia owned this game, dominated this game in every single aspect. Offense, defense, special teams, you name it. Coaching, there were so many decisions, boneheaded decisions that Billy Napier was doing. I'm like, what is he doing? Like, horrible game for Florida. Great game for Georgia. There's no reason for Georgia to not be number 1 in the college football playoff coming out. There's no reason for Georgia to not be 1 in any ranking. They are looking like the most complete team. They are only getting better, even without their best player on their roster. And Brock Bowers, arguably the best player in the country, they don't miss a step. They look like still like one of the most complete teams in the country with Brock Bowers out. Ohio State, Alabama, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You don't lose one player and then bitch and complain and make excuses of why you lost because you lost that one player. If your entire team, especially if it's not the quarterback I can kind of get behind because they're the one player that touches the ball every single play. If your team is built around one person, if that one person goes out and you can't win, you don't have a team. You have a single player at that point. You don't have a team. That's the way it's done, Alabama and Ohio State. So shut up with all the fucking excuse making that y'all usually do. Oh, if we had him, if he didn't go out, he would have won the game. Shut up. No, you wouldn't have. You still would have lost. Take the L. Continue to lose. But yeah, I mean, it was a roasting. There was some gator meat had last night, and boy, was it a fun game to watch. like I said, I mean, there's just not much more to say about this besides Georgia just played a pure dominating game in every aspect. I want to see them come out starting better. I didn't like that how Florida kind of made it look easy to score that first touchdown. You kind of see that a lot from this Georgia defense. It's almost like they're filling the offense out. They're not playing as aggressive. They're kind of playing like a shell. And once they kind of figure it out after one drive, then they kind of make the adjustments and they hunker down. So that would probably be the only thing I would say to clean up from this game for Georgia moving forward is to play the way you did on offense, which was very dynamic, and start off hotter on defense. You know, don't because that first drive, I'll tell you what, after that first drive for Florida, I was like, oh shit, this might actually be a game, because they looked like they were going to be able to move the ball down the field with ease, because they did on that first drive. They moved the ball down the field with ease. Graham Mertz was tearing up our secondary, and I felt like every time we threw the ball, the receiver was wide open with not a single Georgia player within 5 yards of him. So it's like he would catch the ball and get a couple yards after the catch. And just when we'd get him on third down, they would convert it. But here's another thing. Speaking of third downs for Florida, after that first drive, I've already said many times before, they couldn't get anything going. I said, in one of my keys to this game for Florida, I basically said the keys to Florida is to create some turnovers, which they did not. Start hot, which they did, and they've got to get better on third down conversion. Going into this game, their third down conversion percentage was horrible. I think I have it here. Let me see. I know I wrote it down when I did the preview for this game, because I could not believe how bad their percentage was. It was, let's see here. Now I'm taking time out to do this. 32.9%. Florida's third down percent coming into this game on third down, they only converted 32.9. I'll round it up, 33% of the time. In this game on third down, it was not much better. 36% of the time. You're not going to win against Georgia with that horrible numbers on third down. Like, you're just not. You got to convert third downs. And that's where Georgia thrives, is getting you in third down and shutting you down. What you really want to do against this Georgia team is not get to third downs. You want to convert on first and second down and limit the amount of third downs that you have. But you're just not going to do that against Georgia. So my keys to the game, Florida did not. I mean, they started off hot. They took the quick early lead. They did. That's the only thing they did. They allowed Georgia to come right back and gain the lead, and they created 0 turnovers. They actually had a turnover, but they created 0 turnovers, and they were abysmal on third down conversion rate again. It's just not going to happen. This Florida team is years away from 2, 3 plus, maybe 4 years away from actually being able to compete in a top 15, top 20 type level, especially with the SEC expanding and getting a lot more difficult in that schedule for Florida next year. I mean, it's brutal. It's brutal. I talked about in my preview and prediction about how bad that schedule is for Florida. I don't see where Florida goes from here. I still see 3 more losses on the season in a one game where it's a 50-50 game. Like, I do think Florida is probably the better team than Arkansas, but I don't know if I can take them to win. I don't know if I trust Florida getting that win. Even with it being in Gainesville, you got to think this is an emotional loss from them because they got their ass whooped, spanked. They got dragged up and down the field like they were toddlers. So, I mean, this is a bad look, and I don't know how they're going to respond next week. And so if they lose that Arkansas game next week, they very well could lose the rest of their games and finish 5-7 with the losing, not even make a bowl game if they're not careful. But, hey, I love to see it. I love to see it. Go Dogs, baby. Them Dogs as hell. Florida, you trash, you suck, you never beating us again. Everything about this game, you suck. Fuck Florida. Other than that, over and out.